Welcome to the Non-Essential Podcast. I'm Steve Gibson.
I'm Ben Matlock.
And we're back.
I can't keep my notes open. Oh no. Hey, let's do the show. And then it's like it keeps trying to I just want it slightly to the left. I don't want it on my screen locked to the left. I just want it out of the way. And
I hate that shit where it's like you want to dock it to the side of your screen. It's like nobody in the history of computer users ever wanted to dock anything to the side of their screen like that.
No, I do it all the time when I'm writing the notes themselves. But now it's like, well, if you don't want to lock it to the left, you want it all over the screen. It's like, that's not what I said either. Just Windows,
See, but
please.
Well, mine always does because I'm lazy and I just keep mine on Google. Like I write my notes on Google Drive and I just read them off of Google Drive. But it'll wait, because I'll pull my notes up before we even connect to the call, and then we usually bullshit for a while, and then we hit record, and then right as we start doing the show, Google will sign me up we need you to sign back in to prove it's you. It's like, I've been fucking signed in for 40 minutes.
You have my blood now.
Right.
How much more time do you need? So yeah, welcome to the Non-Essential Podcast, where we're never prepared.
Nope.
Yeah, on this show we tell each other stories and fuck us, huh? Fuck us for doing that.
Yeah.
Who do we think we are?
I don't know. I think it's funny because I don't listen to all of our shows anymore because we record them. But every now and then I do. And I listened to last week's episode. I was just looking for podcasts, and I was going through the
wow,
comedy
these guys
section.
are pretty good.
Well, that's what's funny is because I went to the comedy section because it's trying to get some inspiration, be what could we do better? And I listened to these other shows, and this is going to sound like so much hubris, but so many of these podcasts, even professionally produced ones with actual famous people on them, I'm like, this show sucks.
Oh, we're better. Yeah, we're better than a lot of shit out there.
And then I literally listened to 4 or 5 or tried to and gave up. I'm like, I'm going to listen to ours. And aside from my half dead ass last week coughing every 30 seconds, it was actually a pretty entertaining show.
No, it is arrogant as fuck, but I genuinely like our show, and I think it is better than a lot of shit.
Yeah.
Except you, dear listener, if you have a podcast, I love it.
Yeah, yours is better.
Yeah, we know what is up. We know how to do
even
this
if you don't
thing.
actually do a podcast. If you've had an idea for a podcast, that's better.
Whatever podcast you enjoy, those are my favorites too. And by that I mean I don't listen to any podcast besides ours.
I know, I really don't either. That was the problem, is I don't have go-to podcasts. But
they're all either just ad-filled shit that's this is something that bothers me, and I was hoping that I would jump right into my story, but I'm not going to do that. I'm not good at it.
I forgot you said that.
But I already forgot. But now I already have to make this point. I listen to a lot of sports podcasts that are team-centric. So Clippers podcasts, Eagles podcasts. Guys just sort of breaking down game by game and shit. And something that really bugs me is if you do a podcast and you need to take a break 15 minutes into the podcast, don't do a podcast.
Yeah.
You're not cut out for it. It's one thing if that's how your sponsors are lined up, is okay, we're going to have a sponsor come in. These shows don't have sponsors that I'm talking about. It's literally 3 guys on a fucking Discord chat, and they're like, well, let's take a break, and then we'll come back and we'll talk about more fucking basketball. And it's how are you tired?
And you kind of hit on one of my biggest pet peeves. 3 people podcasts, I think, can be done and can be good. You get much more than that, and there's so many of these out here that's there's 6 of us on this call, and
that's
just
that's video game podcasts.
Oh,
they got really bad about that, and I love the golden age of Giant Bomb, but it's their fault, kind of, because they were we're going to have all fucking 15 guys on staff on this podcast, so it's a 6-hour show every week. And it's
and everybody's talking over each other. I can do that. The problem for me is if it was a visual, if you were watching, I know a lot of them originally stream on what used to be Twitch, and I don't know who people use now, but it's a little different because then you can like physically see who's talking, and it's easier to follow the conversation.
Yeah.
But when it's just like a radio conversation with like 6 people, it's tough.
Yeah.
So, fortunately for you guys, listeners, we don't know 4 other people between the 2 of us.
Yeah. We kept it simple by necessity. So yeah, I have another real topic this week.
Man, we're setting dangerous precedents here. You talked about it. What it is it's like we're daring each other to be the
who's gonna cave? You know, who's gonna just like it's gonna be like Wednesday and just be like, fuck it, I don't feel like it.
Right.
But neither one of us wants to break the streak. And so I don't really know what inspired me to even look this up. Like, I think I've been playing a lot of the new Street Fighter, and I'm really bad at it.
I had no idea you were playing that.
It's really fun, but
with all the other stuff that's out, though, that's kind of surprising to me. I mean, not that because it's a Street Fighter's usually a pretty good game, but
yeah, it's fun. But I've always sucked at it, and this game's not really an exception. And you can go online and you can look up guides and stuff like that. But I decided to go another way to improve and look up real martial artists. And I found one specifically who we'll make the call at the end of the story, but we'll see if like his philosophy is what's going to take me to the next level in my martial arts career.
I'm already going to guess yes, because I'm guessing that your level is like, it would be very hard to not improve it. Like,
yeah, okay. Just let's see how this goes.
Just hang on.
Yeah.
Okay.
So John Keehan was born in Chicago on February 2nd, 1939. His dad was a physician and director of the Ashland State Bank, which sounds like a lot of work, but I imagine directing a bank just means you go into a building and swim in a little kiddie pool of money.
Yeah, but did you say physician and director of the bank?
Yeah.
That's 2 very, very different jobs.
Yeah. Well, I think also when you have a lot of money, they just put you in charge of banks.
Yeah.
His mother also occasionally wrote for the Chicago Tribune, and he had a sister. I don't really know why I'm telling you about this because it's not their story. It's John's story. They were a well-to-do family, but John needed to forge his own path in life with his fists.
And his father's money.
Yeah. So he just coast a little bit. Yeah. In his teens, John boxed at a local gym. After graduating high school, he joined the Marine Reserves and later the Army, where he learned hand-to-hand combat and jiu-jitsu. During the 1950s, when the West was just starting to kind of explore Asian martial arts on a wide scale, John would train under various masters. By 1962, he was a teacher at Gene Waika's Judo and Karate Center. He would later travel to Phoenix to study under karate pioneer Robert Trias, who had opened the first karate school in the U.S., and was head of the United States Karate Association, which
is an easy position to get when you're the first school
when you decide I'm him.
Right.
John trained full-time and earned his second-degree black belt and was appointed the Karate Association's Midwest representative in a pool of one, I imagine.
It's kind of like that a couple weeks ago. I was talking about that guy with the penny farthing bike. It's like, yeah, it was easy to set records when nobody else was doing things.
Yeah, but nobody can ever take you out of that book, you know?
Right. Yeah.
While there was a growing popularity for the martial arts in the States, dojos in John's time were still kind of dingy places. You know, people who were into martial arts, they were cops and like former military people and just the type of people who want to fight. Now it's, you know, that's kind of the image with it, with like UFC and shit. But you'll see people at like jiu-jitsu classes who are just everyday, you know, Joes and shit.
Yeah, accountants and optometrists and every kind of nerd you can think of.
Yeah, really destroying the whole mugging market for all of us, because now anybody can put you in a fucking triangle choke. To John's credit, he wanted to grow the martial arts in the kind of ways they had grown in their country of origin. He wanted spectacles. He wanted competitions of skill and tournaments. He wanted to punch bricks and shit while a nearby construction worker had a hammer and could do the same thing, but...
Hire me, I don't need tools.
Yeah.
I was like, we don't really care if you use tools. Like, that's not a
not
a hindrance.
I just want the brick destroyed, and if you could do it without a hospital bill, that would be cool. So he would organize tournaments, and he started to gain a little notoriety for himself, appearing on tournament programs where he was smashing 8 rows of bricks with his elbow. And he promoted the fuck out of these tournaments because fucking John wanted to be a star. John's early tournaments attracted a host of martial arts legends. Most of them I don't know. Like Ed Parker and Jun Rhee. Sorry guys, I'm sure you're great. Bruce Lee even showed up for some of them.
It's pretty smart to hedge your bet there and try not to insult martial artists.
Yeah.
Because they'll show up, they'll be like 98 and they'll still kick your ass.
Yeah. Well, they know some like fucking 5-finger point fucking thing, except instead of killing you immediately, it just makes you shit your pants.
Yeah.
John also gained a large amount of new students from these tournaments. So it wasn't just showmanship. Like, if you wanted to be in the martial arts business, you kind of needed to train people eventually. A former student, now a 66-year-old retiree, described John as an ideal instructor who focused on basics and fundamentals, and that he had excellent form. He also said that John was one of the few men who could sidekick or punch a brick in half.
I need to, I hate to interrupt, but that was a typo. He had excellent forms, like where you sign up, like the letterhead was just phenomenal.
Contractual obligations.
Yeah, they're very
like
good.
You've never seen. But yeah, he said John was one of the few people who could punch a brick in half. John actually did do this at an event. However, it took 3 strikes and it broke 5 bones in his hand.
Well...
Still impressive, but...
Yeah. If anything, it's almost more impressive because I imagine that he broke or has started breaking the bones in his hands prior to, like, probably on strike 1 or 2, and then you're like, fuck it.
Yeah.
It's already broken. Let's go.
I did see footage of, like, North Korean soldiers training, and they would, like, they would have, like, sledgehammers smash their hands and shit. And I'm like, the bone doesn't, like, get tougher. Like the more you break it, it becomes more likely to break.
Right. Well, I mean, it can like calcify, but then you can't use your hand because it's just this lump of like scar tissue and...
Yeah, if like you're trying to create boxing gloves without the gloves, keep at it.
And it's like, all right, but your shoes are constantly untied because you can't move your fingers.
Yeah. But as I touched on, John loved the attention probably more than the business success of his events, and he had a very high opinion of himself and his approach to martial arts. He would argue with other karate schools and basically call every other teacher a pussy.
So it's like the Cobra Kai.
Yeah. I would not be surprised if he was the inspiration a little bit for the whole idea of like Karate Kid villains.
Yeah, like that original one. The sweep the leg guy.
Yeah, like, so he wanted full contact matches with no safety equipment, no pulling punches. John basically wanted to charge everybody $20 a month to whip their ass.
Mortal Kombat.
Yeah. To his credit, he was an equal opportunity teacher in a time where that was not common. It's hilarious to think race was an issue among a bunch of white Americans who stole this shit from Asian people. But race as an issue could be printed on America's business card.
You know what? Yeah, I was just watching, it has nothing to do with karate. There's a documentary that came out, like, I think 2021, that I just came across. It was called, like, street gangs, the story of Sesame Street, whatever. It was like history of Sesame Street. It was actually very like I liked it. It was very informative and entertaining. What I didn't realize was that when the show finally like came out and got real popular, the whole state of Missouri, I think it was, or Mississippi, I think it was Missouri though, like refused to air it because there was too many black kids on it. It's like literally. Cool. And then the only thing that fixed that was a private, like somebody that owned a broadcast station in the state was like, well, if the state won't air it on like their basically PBS, like we'll pick it up and make money off of it. And then the state was like, oh shit, this is really popular. Nobody's watching our crap. So they switched, but that's what they said. They're like, oh, this show, there's too many black people on it.
Nobody will watch.
Yeah. And it was funny how because they worded it just like that. It's like a black person's okay, but not that many. And if you watch Sesame Street,
focus testing tells us we're only a certain amount, and that lasted a really long time in television.
Well, that's the thing is this would have been in the 70s, I think.
Yeah. But even now,
even
now, there's like an algorithm of just like how many, people of color you should put in your show.
Oh yeah, it's you can tell that watching most TV shows.
Yeah.
But anyway, so yeah, to your point, it's not.
It's
I would never have thought about it, but it's not so shocking that karate was also.
Yeah. So John would take on black students when very few would, and this ended up straining his relationship with Master Trias, according to John. Trias, from his point of view, dismissed this as nonsense, while people kind of outside of it tend to believe that there was a sort of institutional ban on minorities in the karate circles, rather than, like they were KKK members, which kind of sounds like an excuse to me. Like it's institutional racism is still racism.
Well, right.
It's not as bad or blatant, but it's still just fucking train them. It's karate.
Well, and unfortunately, that's the other thing our country is good at is they think as long as you're not well, I might be racist, but I'm not into KKK. It's like, well,
if I look both ways before I say some fucked up shit,
right? It's like it really doesn't make you much better. Yeah. I mean, saying I'm not into KKK is a very low bar if you're trying to set moral standards.
Yeah.
But
Trias wasn't the only one, which I think is the point people are trying to make.
Right.
Trias later said that the real reason there was a rift between them was that John Keehan was given too much power at too young of an age. And John definitely was kind of starting to run wild with his fame a little bit. Him and a friend were once arrested after a drunken attempt to blow out a window of Gene Wycka's school, where John had previously taught, with a dynamite cap. John got charged with attempted arson, possession of explosives, and resisting arrest. So you kind of just imagine him like judo flipping every cop who runs at him one at a time, like a video game or something.
Yeah, because it's like, that self-defense training you took? Guess who designed it, fuckers?
So for that, he would get 2 years probation. John also bought a lion cub, which was actually legal to do before 1969.
Well, depending on the area, I think you can. And
probably in some places.
Yeah.
But this is Chicago, and he just walked a lion cub around like a dog.
Yeah, well, sure.
Meanwhile, his tournaments and shows were starting to kind of delve into like trashy backyard hardcore wrestling.
So they got good.
They sold.
That sounds way better to me than just that stuffy like karate recital shit that we've all seen.
Like, no, I want to see somebody get their throat ripped out.
Yeah.
In 1967, he advertised that for one of his shows, a bull would be killed in a single blow. And they drove around town with a bull in a flatbed truck that was just covered in signs advertising the event. Of course, he himself wasn't to kill the bull. He was going to have his 19-year-old student, Arthur Rapkin, do that. Arthur was actually very eager to kill this bull. Maybe too eager.
Yeah.
In an interview before the event, he said that if the police prevented him from killing the bull at the venue, he would kill it in the truck.
Yeah, but that's, to me, sounds like a cry for help. Like, if the police stop me, if you guys have any ideas, if you think you're going to stop me, don't show up at this time because I want to do this. Totally.
Yeah. However, just before the event was supposed to go on, John announced that they had been shut down by the Chicago SPCA. Arthur believes they were never going to let him follow through with the event and kind of sounds disappointed about it, if you ask me.
So he just goes to some farm and punches the bull.
Yeah. It leaves out the part that Arthur was killed trying to attack another bull that night.
Oh, yeah. But it was a Chicago bull.
Yeah, he went after MJ.
Yeah.
Big mistake. MJ had that killer instinct, man.
I mean, he would have been like, this is late 60s. Michael was probably like 5 at the time. I still think I would have give the edge to MJ.
I don't think there's an age where Michael Jordan couldn't kick my ass at basketball. So this was, we're hitting the point now where I was sold on this as a story.
Yeah, we start to get to bull punching, and you're like, you've got my attention.
No, this is the good shit here. That same year, John Keehan decided he needed to become something more, something greater than John Keehan, a symbol of kung fu shit. He changed his name to Juan Rafael Dante, in what he described as an effort to reclaim his family's royal title they had lost when his parents immigrated to the U.S. in 1936 during the Spanish Civil War.
Yeah, his poor parents that had to immigrate and become a physician, a bank manager, and a newspaper journalist.
And the thing that might not be obvious, but John Keehan was Irish. Completely Irish. His name was Keehan.
The Irish really were the victims of the Spanish Civil War, if you think about it.
Yeah, they took everything. That whole war ran on potatoes.
That, it's not well known, but For Whom the Bell Tolls was about John Keehan's family.
Yeah, we didn't have a single Guinness after that war. So yeah, he was very Irish, but don't tell Juan Rafael Dante that. So with the new name, Count Dante became a flashier showman. He would arrive at tournaments in a cape with a cane topped with a lion's head. He dyed his hair black and trimmed his beard. He actually did kind of look like a Street Fighter character. He also opened a hair salon called the House of Dante and tried to sell Arthur, who would have been a bull puncher. He was trying to sell him on the idea of working there because it would have given him flexible hours to train, and it wasn't a bad way to meet girls.
Well, yeah.
So imagine this Count Dooku-looking fuck trying to play wingman for you.
Yeah. I mean, you would meet women technically. I don't think a single one would assume that you're into them.
And they would be like, right. And they'd be like, "That's your friend with the weird fucking devil beard."
These two guys are clearly lovers, right?
Yeah. Count Dante was now ready to go national with his shit, and he became fascinated with the idea of Kung Fu Dim Mak, or poison hand strikes. This involved techniques like thumbing out eyes, flaying skin, and fish-hooking lips. Dante...
So just fighting dirty, basically.
Yes, yeah, totally.
Yeah.
Dante created the world's Deadliest Fighting Secrets pamphlet, which promised to teach what he called the Dance of Death, which was a rapid combination of cheap shit that would leave your opponent in a bloody heap.
Unless your opponent had a gun or a knife or any other kind of weapon.
Totally. It's like, I have a variation of it, which is just like, just keep punching the balls.
Speed bag,
yeah. He specifically advertised in comic books, mostly because kids were probably more likely to buy something that read the following. This is from his pamphlet. Yes, this is the deadliest and most terrifying fighting art known to man, and without equal. Its maiming, mutilating, disfiguring, paralyzing, and crippling techniques are known by only a few people in the world. An expert at dim mak could easily kill many judo, karate, kung fu, aikido, and gung fu experts at one time with only fingertip pressure, using his murderous, poison-hand weapons. Instructing you step by step through each move in this manual is none other than Count Dante, the deadliest man who ever lived. And then in parentheses it says the Crown Prince of Death.
parentheses, the man who wouldn't punch the bull when wanted the 19-year-old to do it instead.
Yeah.
Poison hands doesn't work on animals, unfortunately.
You could probably find copies of this pamphlet online, I bet. I couldn't find it on any of the articles I found. But essentially the first 2 pages of the pamphlet were basically Dante just sucking himself off about all the shit he learned and his handsome looks, and oddly enough, his love of classical singing.
Well, it's important.
Yeah. Then
we've all seen the action movies where like the bloodiest fight scenes are going, but there's just like the operatic area going on in the background. It makes it, it makes it more dramatic.
Yeah, and he appreciated the arts, martial and otherwise.
Mm-hmm.
Then there were photos of him demonstrating these great techniques like groin slap or grab and tear off, a.k.a. the monkey stealing a peach, which I love that fucking name.
Yeah. Well, there's a reason that if I'm fighting, I tend to keep my peach covered. There's not easy access to that.
Yeah. Well, Dante will make the access.
Yeah, that's true. With his poison hand.
Yeah. So like we said, the whole concept of the Dance of Death was really just doing a lot of dirty shit all at once. And it was overkill, but for as funny as a character as this guy is, he does get a lot of props from kind of the Chicago martial arts scene, because a lot of people pointed out, like, even in his like most vain instances, he understood like key martial arts things, which is like any one individual technique can fail, so you should go after every weak point you can in a real fight.
Yeah.
This pamphlet was apparently pretty successful because Count Dante opened 3 new academies and continued to hold tournaments and make a name for himself as, like we said, kind of a Karate Kid villain.
Yeah, I was going to say, at this point, I don't want to be anywhere near this guy while he's wearing a gi.
He was actually, his name of his school was like the Black Dragons, so he embraced it entirely. However, the Chicago's greater martial arts scene began to kind of reject Count Dante. He would claim it's because of his bad boy reputation. The other masters claimed it was because he was going around saying shit like he taught 60% of them, and they just kind of found him annoying.
Yeah.
But
they probably were tired of having their eyes gouged out.
Yeah, could you stop fucking monkey stealing my peach? But there were more valid criticisms about him and his tournaments. One instructor who judged one at a time claimed it was basically just an amateur boxing match, and others pointed out that people were really just coming to see blood get spilled. So again, hardcore wrestling shit.
UFC. I mean, that's...
Yeah. But there was definitely an audience for it. Like you said, it's so people didn't always want to watch that like really sterile, respectful karate competition. And Dante's reputation continued to grow, but old grudges still burned.
Oh no. Here comes Scorpion.
In 1970, Big Duke Dante wanted to visit a rival dojo, the Green Dragon Society Black Cobra Hall of Gung Fu and Kenpo, to settle a beef with a member. Nobody remembers what the beef was, but Dante claimed that he and his students received death threats and that he'd planned to level their entire instructor force. So he called a couple friends. One claims to this day that he was only asked to be there as a mediator. The other was Dante's best student. He was described as an animal with a killer instinct. So
not Arthur or whatever the kid's name was.
So not a mediator.
Yeah.
His student brought a few of students of his own who Dante kind of thought were too wimpy, but told him to, come along. When they arrived at the dojo, Dante broke down the door, which probably took 3 punches, the records don't say. They found 6 green dragons inside, armed with Chinese weapons, and a brawl broke out. Some say the fight started when one of Dante's men hit a green dragon with a nunchaku. Others say Dante started the fight himself, lacerating a green dragon instructor's eye to the point it needed surgery. Meanwhile, Dante's number 1 guy, who was raring to go, his name was Jim Konchekovic, jumped right into the shit and began punching a green dragon from behind. This green dragon responded with a counter I don't think even Master Dante was prepared for. He grabbed a sword off the wall and stabbed Jim.
Yeah. Whoops.
That's a very specific technique, very high level. Dante then immediately shouted for everybody to stop fighting or he'd call the cops. Be the voice of reason, Dante.
At that point, they broke in and assaulted you. I'd be like, call the fucking cops.
Yeah. Jim, bleeding out, yelled for everybody to get the fuck out. And him and the Dante boys ran out. But Jim only made it a few feet before falling. And he died there on the sidewalk at the age of 26.
Yeah. Long life in the karate community.
Yeah. The Green Dragon with the sword was charged with murder. Somehow John Count Dante Keehan managed to get himself arrested for aggravated battery and impersonating a police officer. No one knows how the latter charge happened.
Now I'm picturing that because I just watched, I know we've been talking about the I Think You Should Leave, but I just saw the hot dog sketch. That's exactly what I'm picturing. Well, not exactly, but very similar to the...
But I imagine he just carried a little plastic badge around with him. Anytime the cops pulled up, he'd just be like, oh, he's got it.
I'm here with you guys. We're looking for the guy who did this.
And Deputy Dante here. Count Dante's lawyer, he's a man named Bob Cooley, who I think was involved in some mob trials and shit. His name comes up.
The name sounds very familiar.
He represented Count Dante, and he wrote about it, and he described Dante as a tall, wild-bearded man wearing a yellow fishnet leotard and a purple cape. So a wrestler. In 1971, the judge dismissed all charges for everybody involved in this fucking mess and told both sides that they were each as guilty as the other.
But that's... It's like, you're all guilty. Yeah. I wish there was something we could do about that, but it cancels out.
You're all guilty, but I don't feel like doing paperwork.
It's like in football where both sides commit a penalty, so they just are like, we're just calling for a redo.
Yeah, you'd be shaking my head, I don't even want to talk about this anymore. Get out of my room. While he didn't go to jail, Big Dante Cool's reputation was pretty tarnished from this event. School rivalries and brawls happened all the time, but somebody dying in the brawl was a whole different story. Dante made a statement in an official karate article. I guess that's the main karate magazine of the time. And he said, I blame myself to a great extent for being responsible for us going over to the Black Cobra Hall in the first place.
Mostly because I specifically asked everybody to go
because
over there.
I totally did it.
Right.
And have gone through living hell because of it.
I always love that kind of like apology where people are like, I blame myself, because that's a clear attempt to get sympathy. Like, because it's a wording saying like, I'm taking on the blame. It's like, but you're clearly to blame.
Yeah. My days of fighting at the drop of a hat have come to an end, and challenges I will accept no more unless first attacked. Nice words, total bullshit.
Yeah.
Not too long after that, he fought two men in a liquor store parking lot after they laughed at his Spanish coat of arms on his car because he's Irish, and that's hilarious. He also fought another guy who called him a fruit in a bar, and he swiped at the chin of Bob Cooley himself during an argument, which Bob said felt like his skin had been ripped off. Dante immediately apologized to Bob after this and promised to make it up to him by showing him a trick where he would catch a bullet. Unfortunately, that never happened.
It's pretty easy to catch a bullet. Like, you catch it in the liver, in the heart, in the lungs. You know.
We're built to catch it. We're like a baseball glove for bullets.
Right.
By 1974, Dante was running a chain of adult bookstores and a car dealership.
Well, it's the next logical step.
Yeah. No fucking way this money was just from martial arts, man. He was money laundering. I know it. No, I don't know what he was up to, but I do know what he got into. He would end up getting into trouble with a local mob boss named Jimmy the Bomber Coutura, and ended up paying that guy $25,000 to resolve the situation and potentially get some mob connections. Dante would get subpoenaed that same year over a possible role in a heist of $4.3 million from the headquarters of the Purulator Security.
Look, we're not saying he did it. We're just saying the suspect had a purple cape and a yellow leotard.
Rode off on a lion. Like, the papers did not describe the deadliest man alive that Dante saw himself as, but rather it called him a former hairdresser who wears a cloak and calls himself Count Dante.
I love that. Completely disregard the one thing that like he
wanted to be known for. Yeah.
Right.
He wasn't a suspect in this technically, and ultimately passed a lie detector test about his involvement.
Oh, that doesn't mean shit.
Yeah, I was going to say whatever that's worth. For what it is worth, everyone but one individual involved in that trial was convicted. So, kind of dodged a bullet not being actually claimed as suspect. The stress of all of this was starting to take its toll on Dante, the great Count of Ireland. He was kind of now just sort of stumbling through life, mixing booze and painkillers. He made a last attempt to kind of revive his martial arts career by hosting a tournament in March of 1975. But the karate world had kind of moved past Dante at this point. A writer for Official Karate characterized Dante as just looking bored and said the event was trash. In an interview,
to which Dante broke into his house and
no, Dante
poison punched him.
Yeah, Dante's poison punching days were over.
Over.
In an interview to promote the event, Count Dante, you know, the karate showman, the fame-seeking bad boy of martial arts, master of the Black Dragons, just sounded tired and defeated and said, "I want people to forget me."
In fairness, I think that this puts him at about 36 years old. And that's about the point. Yeah, I kind of feel the same way.
Yeah.
You know, you hit your mid-30s, you're like, just forget about me.
Yeah. And that seemed to be sincere on his part. He helped a friend set up a school and appointed him his successor as Supreme Grand Master of the Black Dragon Fighting Society, which is apparently still going on to this day.
I was just about to ask, guys.
Yeah.
Because it's something I can join.
Yeah.
I look pretty good in a leotard.
Yeah. After naming his successor, he died 2 months later on May 25th, 1975, due to internal hemorrhaging caused by a bleeding ulcer.
I thought you were going to say a bullet that he caught.
Yeah. He was buried in an unmarked grave in St. Joseph's Cemetery in River Grove. So that's the story of Count Dante.
Had to leave it unmarked because if it was marked, you'd have every green dragon coming and karate chopping that headstone into.
Yeah, it is a weird, like, thing to like be chasing prestige like your whole life, and then just like, you know, to get knocked down to the point it's just like, I don't want to fucking, I don't want anyone to know me. I don't want to be remembered for the shit I did.
Yeah, but in fairness, I think we've seen that with a lot of people that chase these like flamboyant, like intentionally divisive, like personas, because it's like it works at first, and they get the attention that they think they want, and then they realize everybody fucking hates you because you're just obnoxious, and it's like, And a lot of times the people aren't actually like. It sounds to me like he really, really, really just thrived on attention, but wasn't necessarily like. It sounds like it was like a crafted persona that he thought was a good idea.
Yeah, well, I mean, if you ever like watch like, you know, there's a wrestling documentary series called Dark Side of the Ring, and
I've heard of it, but
it'll some of them are well known, some of them are more obscure. But it talks about these wrestlers who went on to have fucked up lives. And there's always a mixture of, like, you know, a little bit of performance, but there's also a little bit of truth to, like, these fucked up characters they make. And if it's not true in the beginning, they kind of adopt it. And
well, that's the thing, too, is it's just kind of human nature, too. Like, if you create these personas and it works and you get attention, it's positive reinforcement. And it's we've seen a lot of celebrities like who start out, it's clearly an act, but by the end, that's kind of who they become.
Yeah.
And then the problem is, like you said, society, like those kind of personalities will get attention for a while, but people get sick of them because they're obnoxious. They're the heels. You know, there's a place for them, but they never.
Yeah, that's the thing. Like, Count Dante would have been perfect a couple decades later in, like, the WWF, you know? Because that's what he wanted to do, you know? And.
Yeah, I think that would have probably fit him really, really well. And you get some better longevity there because there's not too many times that I'm aware of that WWF personalities carry that stuff over to like busting into rival gyms to like stab people with swords.
You would be surprised. Hardcore wrestling's gotten really stupid over the years. People like throwing themselves through glass windows and getting stabbed under the armpit. You know, that's the thing. Like, again, he would have been right at home with modern wrestling.
Yeah.
But yeah, like even reading that story, he sounds like an impossibly annoying, flamboyant shitheel. But I kind of like him.
Well, you start off by talking about Street Fighter, and I'm like, it's. I'm going more Mortal Kombat. It's Johnny Cage is who I'm picturing there, like the ball punching, like self-absorbed.
Yeah, he did seem like the type who would write you an autograph after knocking you out. Mm-hmm. So yeah, that's it. And yeah, I think I'm ready for the big time in Street Fighter. I need to use. The poison hands. Yeah. I need to dick punch more. If there's any lesson, play your fighting games and dick punch as much as possible.
In fairness, that's one of those. Like, we live in a society where, as guys, specifically, like you grow up and people talk about fighting, but you don't go for the low blow. As somebody who's taken like life or death self-defense, like hand-to-hand combat classes, basically the first thing that they tell you there is, fucking go for the low blows. The eyes and the groin are like completely valid targets.
Especially like if it's if your life might be on the line.
Yeah, if it's a real fight, like it's
literally an off switch for a human body. Like,
well, can be. Some people can just fight right through that. Like,
yeah, I'm sure there's some fucking commandos out there who've been punched in the balls enough that, it's nothing. But
it's like the guy, I know we've all seen videos of, and it always is kind of funny to me where you got the guy that's like being belligerent and the cops are like, we're going to tase you, man. We're going to tase you. And then they tase him and he's just like looks at it and like rips it out. Like, what the hell was that? Yeah. Like, you never know.
That's all blood alcohol content that.
That's usually blood cocaine content, but yeah. Alcohol can do it too. But yeah, I kind of want to join the Black Dragons Fighting Society or whatever.
Sounds like a lot of work to me. And you get stabbed.
Well, that's the problem, yeah. Be like, wait, I have to actually show up and train? Like, fuck, I thought I'd just get a costume and a little ID card.
I don't know how I feel about Jim getting stabbed. Because on one hand, it's like, that's kind of, did anybody else have a sword? Why'd you grab a sword?
But on
also,
the other...
But also, again, like, they did have weapons. A nunchuck can kill you.
And they did break your door down and then, like...
Yeah.
And he says he was punching him from the back, so it wasn't like this was all right, let's fight honorably. It was clearly let's jump these guys. So it sounds like the judge eventually kind of agreed there, like...
I think he was just like, this is ridiculous. You both are ridiculous. Why'd you come into my courtroom wearing a leotard?
Yeah. It's like My Cousin Vinny, if you've ever seen that movie. Day 2 he showed up.
It's absolutely brilliant.
Yeah. Day 2 he shows up in a fancy leotard. And he's like, I thought this was
I wore this ridiculous leotard for you. So yeah, that's the show this week. Thank you all for listening. And we'll try again. We'll try to be better.
That's kind of how I end every phone call at work. Thanks for calling. Call again. I'll try to be better next time.
This is Ben doing better. All right. See ya. Bye-bye. Toodles. Ciao.
Adios.